Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me along, and thank you for the intro. I'm just going to go through a few things about myself so you know who I am and what I sort of do as I go through my Shapr and Keyshot process as well. So my name is Sam. I am an industrial designer, and I'm based in London. And I also have an Instagram page called Sam Does Design, where I share a lot of the work that I do in teaching people about industrial design and teaching people about product visualization and things like that. So on my Instagram page here, you can see I've got some Keyshot renders that I like to post, some interior Keyshot renders focusing on materials and things like that. And also I have some examples of my personal projects. So this is a lighting design in collaboration with Gantry. It is a 3D printed design. Cool. You guys haven't missed out on much. I just brought up this picture of the 3D printed light from Gantry. So this is something that I modeled and rendered a lot in Keyshot before I finally got some actual photos of it from Gantry themselves. So that's now for sale in the US and Canada if you're based there. But I can go back and through and show you the rest of my Instagram page. Like I said, a lot of Keyshot renders, a lot of stuff that I like to show outside of my work. And real quick, I'm going to just take you over to the Precipice Design website, which is the company that I work for. And I'm really excited to announce that we have just been given the go ahead to say that we have worked with Braun Audio on launching their new range of LE speakers, which are launching for the first time at IFA in Berlin this week. So it's been a hectic day today because today has been launch day. So again, just congratulations to the Precipice team and to the Braun Audio team as well. Okay, enough about me. Let's hop on into Shapr. And I've got a few tips and tricks that I want to show with everyone. I'm going to go full screen here. And the first thing is when you're modeling in Shapr. So let's take this model, for example, which was a fun little project that I put together where I wanted to do an 80s or 90s inspired MacBook with all the latest technology. So you can see down here, we've got a USB-C inputs over here, but because it is 80s and 90s, it's also got a disk drive or a floppy disk drive, depending on the time over on this side as well. So let's take this model as an example of what we're going to use today to take into Keyshot. And the first tip, I've got 5 tips that I'm going to use in Shapr. I've got 5 tips that I'm going to use in Keyshot. And then at the end, we're going to do a question and answering session. And honestly, guys, that's my favorite part of the time that I do this stuff, because at least with question and answering sessions, I know that it's stuff that you guys are interested in. So I'm going to try and zoom through all of these 5 tips that I've got in both Shapr and Keyshot, and then we'll get into some question answering sessions at the end. So the first tip that I've got in Shapr is to really imagine the product in the real world. And what we do as industrial designers is we design to constraints. And what those constraints normally are either budget constraints or manufacturing constraints. And things like manufacturing constraints, you can actually build into Shapr3D. And a good example of that is what we call draft angles. And draft angles are essentially on any product that has been injection molded, there will be a draft angle on that part, so that when it gets injection molded in the molds, in the tool, it's really easy to push it out of the tool, and you have to be really careful of undercuts and straight edges and things like that. So we model in these angles into the parts so that it lets them be released from the mold easier. Now, a rule of thumb is 3 degrees. That's what we say is a rule of thumb. Some manufacturers, when you start talking to the manufacturers, they can get it down to 2 degrees or 1 degree. But as a rule of thumb, 3 degrees is kind of the going rate for draft angles. And actually, even if you have no plans of taking anything to market and to manufacturer, like I have no plans of bringing this Macintosh Air to market, I don't really think I'd enjoy the lawsuit from Apple. Even if you're not thinking about bringing something to the market, it's these little details that will make something look more realistic later on. So your eye is not going to pick up on the fact that these angles aren't straight. But if they were straight, they just wouldn't look right. And something would look wrong because we know and we have been taught over our life on this earth that straight things like this in the real world actually have some slight angles too. So that is tip number one. Model everything bearing in mind that it will be seen in the real world later on. I mean, that goes without saying for things that you want to manufacture, but also concept designs as well. You're sort of given more free rein in concept designs, but the earlier you can put in the draft angles, the better, because, and believe me, in the past, we've designed things for precipice design, and it looks amazing, and it can fit the electronics inside really well, and it's the smallest thing and the thinnest thing that we can possibly do. But then as soon as you realize, oh, we have to add draft angles, and we have to add tolerances, and we have to add wall thicknesses, then it starts to change the design. So without getting yourself caught up with that later on, planning for that earlier on is really going to help. Number two, the tip number two for Shapr is using reference planes and using images that you import as well. So I've zoomed out over here, and you can see I've actually imported an Apple logo that I downloaded from the internet. And what that basically did was allow me to model more realistically without having to go through and think about, okay, this is 2 times X from here to here, and then 3 times X from here to here. Finding existing solutions on the internet is it's going to save you a lot of time. And you can do that by coming down into add over here, and then add image. So let's say, for example, I wanted to make a reference of the gantry light that I did to maybe make some design changes. I could go ahead and insert that. That is a large file, and place it in there. And then I can scale it and add stuff. And then once that's placed in place there, then I can go ahead and start sketching things over it. And maybe, you know, I change the proportions a little bit based on the proportions of the real world. So tip number 2 is use as much real world data as you can, use as much imported data as you can, because Shapr is great at referencing those types of things. And then you can even go in and scale things to be, like I said, in the real world, you need to make sure it's scalable and fits around all the internal components as well. The next thing that I want to talk about is the labeling system. And you can see here that I have got so many parts because each of these keys is a different part. And I made this keyboard by making one key and then duplicating it across and moving it. And the way that I did that was I can go over to the move tool, duplicate this, and then copy, and then you can see that I've got a copy. So I did that again and again and again until I had all of the keys. But the tip is actually to go through and label all of these layers, because when you import to KeyShot later on, it's really going to help you in understanding what's going on. So to do that, for example, I'm just going to come out of this and name it here. And this is key, I guess that is a T key. So T key. And then that's going to be easy enough. And then I can start to add it in folders and stuff as well. So if I wanted to put all of the keys in one folder, I can do that really easily. So I've gone against the tip that I had. You can see, so my tip was label all of your layers and make sure you put them into folders. And then, of course, I've gone in here and I haven't listened to my own advice. And it's just, it really starts to add up. Oh, and actually, I forgot that I had this in here. You can see if I go to, where's that gone? There is actually also an image of the keyboard, and that's what I imported. And that is what let me make the keys the right shape and the right size to correspond with the current MacBook Air. Actually, this is a MacBook Pro keyboard, but you get the idea. That is exactly how I got all of the right proportions within the keys. So